We've shaped up our curve a little bit and we're ready to convert it to 3D geometry using lathe modifier. It's currently in object mode. I've exited out of subobject vertex. If you're still in vertex mode, you can just exit out of that and now you'll be in object mode. When we add the lathe, the center or axis of rotation will be placed at the location of the object's pivot point by default. And that would give us some very strange results right now because our pivot is not where it needs to be. It needs to be actually on this axis line. If we just lathed it right now, we would get this wacky self-intersecting geometry and it would be really ugly. So let's fix that first. We saw how to move pivot points earlier in the course. Let's just do that once again. With the object selected, go to the hierarchy panel here. And in pivot mode, click on Affect Pivot Only. And you may need to actually just move the pivot in order to make it visible. And we want to make sure that we snap exactly to this line. Let's turn our snaps back on again. And then notice that if I move my cursor near that pivot point or near that gizmo, that I'm going to snap to the nearby grid intersections. Let's get in a little bit closer here. What I really want to do here is to click on this bracket and then move. And that will cause the pivot, or more precisely, the gizmo, to snap to grid intersections. Okay, so that's a little bit strange. You don't really want to click in the center there. You want to click on that bracket and it will actually work the way you want it to. When we're done, we exit out of Affect Pivot Only. All right, we're done with snaps. We can turn that back off again. Now let's go out to our 4 viewport layout with Alt-W. Let's zoom in on the object. We previously created a keyboard shortcut for that, which is Zoom Extents All Selected. And I made it Control-Shift-Z. And if you haven't done that, you can go down into here and click on this button. It does the same thing. Let's turn off the selection brackets here. They're kind of in our way in this perspective view. I'll press the J key to disable those selection brackets. And now we're ready to add our lathe modifier. Go back to the Modify panel, and then from the list, scroll down to the L's and choose Lathe. Let's see what we have. So we've got our lathe. It's actually flipped inside out, but we can easily fix that by checking this checkbox that says Flip Normals, and that'll cause it to be oriented correctly. So we can see exactly how much detail we have on this. Let's enable the edged faces in the perspective view, and that's the F4 key. And now we can control how many divisions we have radially, and that's going to be here in segments. I'm going to turn that up a bit. It's at 16 right now. I'll set it to 32. And now this is enough detail to resolve, and it'll look good in our final scene. That's how to add a lathe. If you add it and it revolves in a weird manner and it doesn't look the way it should, then you can actually move the center of the lathe operation. Go into the lathe modifier and choose the axis subobject type, and then you can go into a front viewport and move that axis, and you can see how that's affecting the shape. But we don't have to do that because we moved the pivot point in advance. I'll undo that with Control-Z and then exit out of subobject. Cool, that's how to work with a lathe or surface of revolution.